Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be cracking open the science of wealth,
Ooh,
and we're going to kind of see how our brains can help us make smarter money
I
choices.
like it.
Yeah, and I think this is something that maybe a lot of us don't really think about. We think
Yeah,
of finances as, numbers and budgets and things like that.
right.
But there's this whole fascinating world of brain activity that's going on behind the scenes that's really driving our decisions.
Yeah, and actually that's one of the things that the science of wealth dives into right away is this whole idea of a money mindset.
Yeah,
We think we're being so logical with our money decisions,
right.
but really there are all these hidden forces at play.
It's like we see the tip of the iceberg, but underneath there's this whole, mass of emotions and kind of preconceived notions that we might not even be aware of.
Exactly, and it's those subconscious beliefs and those emotional responses that can really sabotage our best intentions.
Absolutely. So to kind of like kick things off, I'm curious, like what's actually happening in our brains when we're, faced with a financial decision?
Well, you know, imagine there are these two key players in your brain. Okay.
Okay.
So first you've got the prefrontal cortex.
Okay.
This is like the CEO of your brain, right?
Got it.
It's responsible for planning complex behavior, decision-making, working memory, all that good stuff.
The brains of the operation.
Exactly. And then you've got the amygdala,
Okay.
which is like the emotional center. It's processing those feelings of fear, excitement, and all those things.
So is it kind of like this tug of war between logic and emotion then?
Yeah, you could think of it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, the prefrontal cortex is trying to make these rational decisions,
Mm-hmm.
but then the amygdala is like, oh, but wait, what if this happens? Or I'm scared of that.
Right.
And it can kind of hijack the process.
And the science of wealth actually brings up some interesting research about this. They were talking about how researchers at the University of California found that successful investors tend to have stronger activity in their prefrontal cortex when they're making financial decisions.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
They're able to regulate those emotional impulses coming from the amygdala
Okay.
so they can make those more rational choices.
So it's almost like they've trained their brains to be more level-headed in those high-stakes situations.
Yeah, exactly. It's like building up those mental muscles for financial success.
So this begs the question, like, if our brains are wired differently, how can we leverage our own unique kind of brain wiring for success?
That's a great question. And that's where I think these mental superpowers that the book talks about come into play.
Handle superpowers. Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, the science of wealth identifies 3 key mental states that are linked to better financial outcomes.
Okay.
Focus, emotional regulation, and learning and adaptation.
So like actual superpowers we can develop to make smarter money choices.
I love that analogy. Yeah, exactly.
So let's start with focus, because I think in today's world we're constantly bombarded with distractions.
Right.
So how does focus play a role in our financial well-being?
Well, when you're focused, your brain is in a state that's really conducive to analytical thinking.
Okay.
And this state is characterized by what are called beta waves.
Beta waves.
Yeah, these brain waves associated with alert attentiveness.
Hmm.
So when your brain is buzzing with these beta waves, you're better equipped to really analyze information and weigh those potential outcomes and make those thoughtful decisions.
So it's like instead of impulsively buying that, shiny new gadget, I can tap into my beta wave power and say, wait a minute, do I actually need this?
Exactly. It's all about bringing that conscious awareness to your financial choices.
And then we got emotional regulation, which I think is something we could probably all use a little bit more of.
Yeah, especially when it comes to money.
Mm-hmm.
Things can get pretty emotional when we're talking about our finances.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. So how do we kind of keep our cool when the stock market takes a dip or we get hit with an unexpected bill?
Well, it's helpful to understand what's going on in your brain in those moments.
Okay.
So let's say, you're facing a financial challenge and your amygdala is like sending out those stress signals, right?
Yeah.
Your heart rate increases. You feel that urge to react quickly.
Yep, been there.
But that's where the anterior cingulate cortex comes in.
Oh, yeah. See, anterior cingulate cortex, what does that do?
It's like the mediator of your brain.
Okay.
It helps you detect errors, resolve conflicts, and it basically allows you to take a breath,
Yeah.
assess the situation, and make a more reasoned choice rather than just, panicking and making an impulsive decision.
So it's like hitting the pause button before I make a rash decision that I might regret later.
Exactly.
That's really helpful to know. All right, so we've got focus, we've got emotional regulation, and then the third superpower is learning and adaptation. And I think this is really fascinating because it's not just about acquiring knowledge about finances, it's about how our brains actually change as we learn.
Yeah, it all comes down to neuroplasticity.
Okay, explain that one to me.
So neuroplasticity is this amazing ability of our brains to constantly rewire themselves based on our experiences. So every time you learn a new financial concept, you develop a budgeting strategy or analyze a market trend, you're strengthening those neural pathways in your brain.
So the more I engage with financial knowledge, the better my brain gets at making sound decisions.
Exactly.
Interesting. So it becomes less about willpower and more about, my brain being wired for success.
I love that. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
essentially building those financial muscles in your brain.
That's a great way to put it. And, you think about someone like Warren Buffett. I mean,
Yeah.
his success isn't just about innate talent. It's about his brain's ability to continuously learn and adapt to new information.
Absolutely. And that's something we could all cultivate.
I love that. That's really encouraging. But I'm also thinking, learning is just the first step, right?
It is.
We actually need to be able to translate that knowledge into action.
You got it.
And I know you mentioned some brain hacks earlier for actually applying this to our daily lives. So can we talk about those?
Absolutely.
Okay, lay it on me. What are some of these brain hacks?
Well, the science of wealth has some really great advice for this.
Okay.
And one of the key takeaways is the power of your mornings.
Warnings.
Really? Yep. Remember how we talked about the prefrontal cortex being at its peak earlier in the day?
Oh, yeah?
Well, we can capitalize on that.
So you're saying we should be checking our investment portfolios before we've even had our coffee?
Maybe not that early,
Hmm.
but you got the right idea.
Okay.
Think about incorporating a money moment into your morning routine. When your prefrontal cortex is primed for those financial decisions. It could be a quick budget review, reading a financial article, or even just visualizing your financial goals.
That's such a great idea. And I feel like it would set a positive tone for the rest of the day.
Exactly. You're starting your day with intention.
And speaking of setting a positive tone, another brain hack is managing stress.
Stress the ultimate saboteur.
Right, because chronic stress can really wreak havoc on our financial decision-making.
Oh, absolutely. When we're stressed out, we're way more likely to make those impulsive purchases.
Oh, tell me about it. I'm like the queen of stress shopping.
Well, it's because when we're stressed, our bodies release this hormone called cortisol.
Cortisol?
Yeah. And high levels of cortisol can actually hinder the prefrontal cortex's ability to make those good decisions.
So it's like stress is hijacking my brain, making me more vulnerable to those tempting splurges.
Pretty much.
Okay, so what's the antidote? What's the brain hack for combating this?
Well, it sounds simple, but it's incredibly effective. Prioritize stress reduction.
Easier said than done sometimes.
I know. But it's so important. Find what works for you, whether it's meditation, yoga, spending time in nature, anything that helps you relax and lower those cortisol levels.
Even taking a few deep breaths before I make a financial decision could make a difference.
Absolutely.
Less stress equals better choices. Got it. All right, so what's the last brain hack you've got for me?
This one might surprise you.
Okay, hit me with it.
Prioritize sleep.
Sleep. What does sleep have to do with my finances?
More than you might think.
Really?
Yeah, studies show that when we're sleep deprived, we tend to make riskier financial decisions.
Oh, no. So I'm basically setting myself up for financial trouble if I'm constantly running on fumes.
It's not good for your brain or your bank account.
Okay, so explain the connection.
Well, it's like when we're sleep deprived, our brain's ability to accurately assess risk and reward gets all thrown off balance. We're more likely to go for those short-term gains, even if they're not in our best interest long-term.
So I need to be getting enough sleep to keep my prefrontal cortex in tip-top shape.
Exactly. Think of sleep as recharging your brain's battery.
Makes sense.
When you're well rested, your prefrontal cortex is better equipped to make those clear-headed financial decisions. You're less likely to fall prey to those tempting, but ultimately unwise financial risks.
Wow, this is so interesting. It's like we've uncovered this whole hidden world of brain activity that's influencing our choices without us even realizing it.
Right. It's fascinating.
But knowing is only half the battle, right? I
Exactly.
need to actually be able to put these insights into action.
And that's what we're going to dive into in the next part of our deep dive.
Awesome.
We're going to explore some practical techniques for building better financial habits that directly leverage these brain processes that we've been talking about.
Love it. So we're going from understanding to action. I can't wait. This is fascinating. Welcome back. So we've been talking about how our brains influence our financial decisions.
Right.
And you know, we've learned about the role of emotions. We've talked about these mental superpowers like focus and emotional regulation and learning.
Yep.
And we've even gotten into some brain hacks for our daily routines. But the science of wealth doesn't stop there. It goes on to actually give us some really cool techniques for building better financial habits.
Yeah, I think that's where it gets really interesting.
Totally.
You know, it's one thing to understand the science,
Right.
but it's another thing to actually apply it in our lives and see real results.
Absolutely. So the book talks about 3 techniques that I thought were really fascinating.
Okay.
Implementation, intentions,
Yes.
mindful spending,
Love it.
and regular review.
Mm-hmm.
And each of these kind of taps into a specific brain process to make building good habits easier.
That's right.
So let's start with implementation intentions. What are those all about?
Well, implementation intentions are basically if-then plans for your money.
Okay.
So instead of just vaguely saying, you know, I want to save more, you create a concrete plan. Like if I get paid on Friday, then I'm going to automatically transfer $100 to my savings account.
So I'm taking the decision-making out of the equation.
Exactly. You're pre-programming your brain for financial success.
That's awesome. Because you know those tempting impulse buys are always going to come up.
Oh, yeah.
But if I've already kind of set up this system,
Right.
then it's like it's not even a decision anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it works because our brains actually love clear instructions. When you create those if-then statements, you activate the brain's goal-directed systems, making it way more likely that you'll follow through.
So it's like I'm removing the need for willpower in the moment?
Yeah. You're basically outsmarting your impulsive self.
That's so smart. Okay, so implementation intentions are about setting up these automatic systems.
Right.
What about mindful spending? How does that work?
Well, mindful spending is about bringing awareness to your purchases.
Okay.
It's about pausing before you swipe that credit card. And asking yourself, do I really need this? Will this purchase truly bring me value? Could I use this money in a more meaningful way?
So it's like hitting the pause button on that impulse to buy and really thinking it through.
Exactly. And that pause is so important.
Yeah.
Because it activates your prefrontal cortex, allowing you to engage your executive function,
Okay.
which helps you weigh the pros and cons, consider the long-term consequences, and make a more thoughtful choice.
So it's not about depriving myself.
Right.
It's about making conscious choices that are actually aligned with my values and goals.
That's it.
I like that a lot better than just relying on willpower.
Yeah, willpower is exhausting,
Right.
and it's not always reliable.
Totally. Okay, so the more I practice mindful spending,
Yes.
the better my brain gets at making those thoughtful decisions.
That's the idea.
Yeah,
You're training your brain to be more financially savvy over time.
cool. All right, so we've got implementation intentions, we've got mindful spending. What about regular review?
Regular review.
Yeah, why is this so important?
Well, regular review is all about setting aside dedicated time,
Okay.
whether it's weekly, monthly, quarterly, to check in with your finances.
So I'm having a regular money date with myself.
I love that.
Right.
Yeah, like put it on the calendar.
Exactly.
You review your budget, you track your spending, you analyze your investments, you reassess your goals.
So I'm holding myself accountable.
Exactly. And when you know you have that check-in coming up, you're less likely to let things slide.
It's like having an accountability partner, but that partner is me.
I like that.
Right.
And the other benefit is that repetition strengthens those neural connections.
Oh,
So by consistently engaging with your finances,
yeah.
you're reinforcing those positive habits,
Okay.
making it easier to stay on track long term.
So it's like building that financial muscle memory.
Exactly.
Yeah,
The more you do it, the easier it becomes.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked about these awesome techniques for building better habits.
Right.
But there's something else that the science of wealth talks about that I found super fascinating.
Okay, what's that?
It's the impact of our environment
Interesting.
on our financial decisions.
Oh, wow.
I never thought about how my surroundings could actually be influencing my money choices.
Yeah, it's something we often overlook,
Totally.
but it's actually more connected than we realize.
So tell me more about that. What's the connection?
Well, studies have shown that clutter, for example, can lead to poorer financial choices.
Really?
Yeah, it's like when our physical space is disorganized, it creates a sense of mental chaos.
Oh.
And that makes it harder for our brains to focus and make those good decisions.
Okay, I'm officially stressed out now thinking about my desk.
I hear you. But the good news is
Okay.
the opposite is also true.
Oh, okay, good.
When our surroundings are clean, organized, visually appealing, it can actually promote a sense of calm and clarity,
Hmm.
which allows our prefrontal cortex to really take the reins.
So if I declutter my workspace, I could actually improve my financial decision making.
Totally possible.
That's amazing. It's like I'm creating a more supportive environment for my brain to thrive.
That's the idea.
It's not just about managing my money, it's about managing my mind, too.
Exactly.
It's a holistic approach to financial well-being.
I love it. Okay, so we've got all these great techniques,
Mm-hmm.
but now the big question is,
What's that?
how do we put it all together?
Yes.
How do we create a plan for financial success that actually works for us?
Well, that's what we're going to talk about in the next part of our deep dive.
Awesome.
We're going to explore how to personalize these strategies based on your own unique brain wizarding.
Okay, this is going to be good. Okay, so we're back, and we're ready to wrap up our deep dive into the science of wealth.
Yeah, it's been a pretty amazing journey so far.
It really has.
Yeah.
You know, we've talked about how our brains can actually work against us when it comes to money.
Mm-hmm.
We've explored, all these different parts of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala.
Right?
We've uncovered those mental superpowers like focus and emotional regulation.
Yeah, and learning and adaptation.
Right. And we've even learned some practical brain hacks to optimize our daily routines.
Like decluttering our workspaces. Yes, exactly. So much good stuff. But now, I'm thinking, okay, we've got all this incredible information.
Right.
But how do we actually put it all together? How do we create a personalized plan for financial success? Something that really works for us.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And one of the things that the science of wealth really emphasizes is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to finances.
Right. Everyone's different.
Exactly. What works for one person might not work for another.
Totally.
So the key is to really understand your own unique brain wiring
Okay.
and create a plan that aligns with your natural tendencies.
So it's like finding the financial strategies that really fit my brain's operating system.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So how do I do that? How do we figure out, what my brain's operating system is?
Well, it starts with self-awareness.
Okay.
We've been talking about all these different parts of the brain that influence our decisions.
Right.
But each of us has a unique balance of those influences.
Right.
Some people might naturally be more impulsive, driven by that immediate gratification,
Mm-hmm.
while others are more risk-averse. They really like to carefully weigh their options.
I'm definitely more of a risk-averse person.
Okay, see,
Yeah.
so that's something to keep in mind.
Right.
And then some people thrive on structure and routine,
Mm-hmm.
while others prefer flexibility and spontaneity.
Okay, that's a good point because I know for me, I'm much better at sticking to my budget when I have a clear plan in place.
Right.
But I also know that I can be a little bit impulsive,
Yeah.
like if I'm stressed or overwhelmed or something like that.
So those are all really important things to be aware of.
Totally.
Yeah.
So how do I use that self-awareness then to actually create a plan that works for me?
Well, I think it's helpful to kind of look back on some of your past financial decisions, both good and bad,
Okay.
and try to identify any patterns.
Like what kinds of patterns?
Well, like what situations or emotions tend to lead you to make those impulsive choices.
Mhm.
And on the flip side, what strategies have helped you stay on track with your goals?
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
So by identifying those patterns,
Yeah.
you can start to tailor your approach.
Okay, I can see that. I'm already starting to kind of see some trends in my own behaviors thinking about it.
Right.
So once I have a better understanding of my tendencies, then how do I actually choose which strategies to focus on?
Well, I think it's helpful to go back to those techniques that we talked about.
Okay, implementation intentions, mindful spending, regular review.
Exactly. And think about which ones really resonated with you,
Mm-hmm.
which ones feel most aligned with your personality and your natural inclinations.
Okay.
So, for example, if you're someone who thrives on structure, you might find implementation intentions super helpful.
All right.
Or if you tend to struggle with emotional spending, then mindful spending could be your go-to strategy.
Yeah, it's like choosing the tools that actually feel good to use rather than trying to force myself to do something that just doesn't feel natural.
Yeah, right. It should feel empowering, not restrictive.
Totally.
And remember, it's a journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about being perfect. It's about progress.
So true. So true. Well, this deep dive has been absolutely incredible.
I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
I feel like I've learned so much, not just about finances, but about myself.
That's the best part, isn't it?
It is.
The science of wealth really reminds us that financial well-being is about so much more than just numbers.
Right.
It's about understanding our own psychology, leveraging our strengths,
Yeah.
and creating a financial life that feels aligned with our values and aspirations.
I love that. And the best part is anyone can do this.
Absolutely.
You don't need a degree in finance or neuroscience.
Right.
It's really about just tapping into the incredible power of your own brain.
Your brain is your most valuable asset.
So true. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this journey.
It's been a pleasure.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.